today we'll talk about what animals do I study. We'll also take a general overview, and then we'll talk about how do I study them. Okay. So, do you recognize these animals in the photo? If anybody just want to, all right. Yes, yes, Dr. Karishma. I think you and most of us have seen this animal sometimes around, like in your backyard, somewhere where you're traveling, right? They're pretty much common, and maybe if somebody just can tell us, or like in the chat box, what grabs your attention in this image mostly. Any responses in the chat box?
Ansh says it's a monkey. Athansh also says monkey. What grabs your attention, guys? Langur. Dutch says langur. These are just
Amazing.
words coming to their mind. I mean, while they are typing, I'll tell you a fun fact, Virendra and Snehal. This type of monkeys during lockdown came into our society and were sitting over the residential gym. We were like, हम लोग सब घर में हैं, and the monkeys are in our gym. I have a picture also of that. Some people saw it, were so shocked, they were shaking.
Oh,
You tell us whether we need to be shaking or not. Okay. So spider monkey, blackface monkey, monkey.
Wow.
But what else do you think? What to me it's that they are very busy. They're doing something.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what grabs our attention every time we see monkeys. They're always busy doing something, and we'll see what they're doing in the next slide. So these are Himalayan langurs. These are the monkeys I study. They are found in this Himalayan belt that is in the north of India. Now, what is interesting over here is you see a group. There is a group living structure over here. You see cooperation in one side. One person is grooming another. The small one is grooming the bigger one. This is called grooming, and we also do it. You know, your grandmother used to groom you when you were a kid. They used to pull out ticks from your hair when you're dirty. They used to oil your hair and put oil all over your body. So this grooming is like a very basic instinct. And then you see in another circle, infant care. You have your aunts in the same group, you have your niece in the same group, and you also have a nephew in the same group along with your mother. So it's always like a hula bula all around. If you see a kid, everybody wants to play with the kid. If they see a kid crying, everybody wants to handle the kid, take care of the kid. So these are like very basic commonalities that are between the monkeys and between us humans. And the most important thing is like living in groups. So in this group, in this picture, we only see one male, but they usually have more than one male and more than one female in one group. This is how their organization is in the forest. And also you have maybe sometimes just one male and a lot of females. So there are two kinds of organizations in the forest. Now, the most important thing is what are primates? So somebody said a spider monkey somewhere in the video, somewhere in the chat. So here you have a spider monkey and you just need to see. So here what we are going to explore in few 3-4 slides is what constitutes primates, what are the basic characteristics of primates. So the first characteristic is like, if you will touch your shoulder from here and you will move your hand like this, you will see a bone. This bone is a characteristic of a primate family. So you have this bone. Okay, this bone helps you to not move your hand in just one direction, but also like this. You can rotate it like this. This, if you will see in the video, in the photograph, in all these photographs, you see you can do a lot of motion with that. You can cling to a branch. You can jump down from a branch. You can move laterally. You can move horizontally. You can move vertically. So this is one feature that is not present in other animals like lions, like squirrels. Squirrels used to climb using their claw, but they cannot move this part. So we have this special feature. So that is an adaptation for prehension, which is like a swinging motion or like hanging over on the branch, and like when you are moving from the trees. All right. So that is one very basic characteristic of primate. What makes us primate is another one thing which is very, very interesting, which is this. So here you see a bonobo. And what makes it important is that this animal has a forward looking eyes. We have a forward looking eyes. Imagine. So if you have done that experiment, and you can do it just right now with me, just cover your one eye with your hand. Okay. And now try to grab something in front of you and try to see if you can actually make out the depth. Can you actually grab something? Can you actually make out the depth? It becomes difficult to see using one eye. You cannot understand the depth perception. But with two eyes, we see the world in a 3D. So that is what has happened with us during evolution. This is only a characteristic of primates, that we have a forward looking eyes. Now this forward-looking eyes, we have a depth perception as well. Compare it to a squirrel. Squirrel has eyes on the side. So squirrel and all these animals which have eyes on side, they do not do depth perception. They view the world as 2D, but primates view the world as 3D. So that is a very, very important thing. All right. So another thing is a very important pattern that we see. This is your hand. Other animals also have a hand. In this video you will see how this hand is used very, very potentially beautifully. So you see this hand over here, you can move your thumb like this, right? Other animals cannot. They do have a thumb, but they cannot. Like a squirrel can only hold things like this, but their thumbs are always like this, right? But we can move our thumb like this. You see, you can move your thumb like this. This is a very dexterous organ that you have, because this makes you grab things. You can climb over a tree, right? So in this image, you will see the hand, you will also see the monkey holding the leaf. So can you see, we also hold things similarly. If this is a pen, I can hold a pen like this, you see? So like this, you grab things, like this, you hold things. In this image also, you see one more peculiar characteristic, which is the development of a nail rather than a claw. If you would have seen your dog or your cat, they have claws. Their claws goes in, goes out. They have retractable claws. But primates do not. Primates have nails over here, which is very important. Why? Because this gives us extra sensitivity at our hands. It makes us feel things much better than other animals. So you can feel a fruit, you can feel the pulpness of a fruit. Is the fruit ripened or not? Which gives you extra sensitivity. You can feel this is a wood. You feel that this is stone. You can feel the texture of the things. So this is another thing which is very, very important that has happened during the development of primates. But the most important thing that has happened with the development of these kind of appendages that we have, like a hand and opposable thumb, is this. This is called grip. So we have two kinds of grip. One is a power grip, which is like we can hold big things around our hand like this. So this is like a power grip. You can climb like a seesaw, or you go into, yeah, exactly, you hold your mug like that, or when you go into amusement park, you climb up the slide. So you climb on the slide like this. So these are very important features that we have, as well as we have a fine grip. How do we hold our pencil? Like this, in between our index finger and our thumb. So these things have been very important during our development from primitive animals to the primates. So that's what makes primates special once again. We move on to another characteristics, which is again very interesting. Large brain. We during our development has become large brained animals, which has given us very, very important cognitive abilities. What are cognitive abilities? Abilities to solve problems, abilities to learn, abilities to do just normal day tasks. But what is special about this? What has happened is that during our time, like growing from like very, very primitive animals, very, very old animals, moving on to primates, the forehead has enlarged. Now what happens in forehead is like very special portion called neocortex, which helps us to learn things, which helps us to understand things, that has developed our ability to memorize things. So this neocortex has actually helped us in our understanding of the world, has make us more dexterous during our development. And finally, when we come to the order primates, we talk about order family, we always pay tribute to this common animal that we all know. I think we all know this primate. I think we all recognize this primate. So yeah. So now we come to the terminology.
Okay. That was a wonderful, Virendra. That we do get it. There, ek do questions le kya chat window se? Is that okay, Virendra?
Yeah,
then we can move on.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Oh, this primate looks a lot like us.
I also think so too.
Okay, I think Harshada had a very nice question. Her question, Virendra, was specifically to you, that how did you realize you have an interest in understanding animals and in maths? And like, how did you start doing this?
Okay. So that's a really nice question. Thank you, Harshada, for this. So my interest was like, I was once in my college, and in our college, we have to do a summer project, and I didn't find a summer project for that summer. So I applied to my current collaborator and my supervisor. She used to work in Himalayas. So she called me for a volunteership. That volunteership was for 2 months. I went there. Before that, I already read 2 books. So I was super excited that yes, I can explore the origin of humans. My basic idea was to explore the origin of us, the origin of humans, how we come to be. But then I went there, I just felt in love with the wildlife, and then I saw them. I saw that they are so much like us. So it was just a 2 month volunteership. But then similarly, I developed a small project, and my master's thesis was coming. That was my final year of my master's. So what I tried is that I thought I should do my project over here. So I got an extension. I did my project over there. I stayed for 8 or 9 months at that field site in Himalayas, and then I came back. So I developed a lot of understanding about the environment of the animal as well as the animal itself. So this is my journey, and after that I did never look back. I started continuing work in different field sites, and now I'm doing my PhD back at the same place where I went in 2018.
That is
Wow.
wonderful. What a story, right, Snehan?
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Sorry, Virendra,
But it
fantastic.
was really interesting over there.
Yeah, the passion is so evident.
Yeah.
Snehan, two questions are about
Yes.
large brain. We can take them together, actually.
Yes, yes. So Anirudh's question is, are there any other large brain animals? And I think Venkat had a question about evolution in large brains. I think, one sec, yeah. So his question was that, like, we see evidence in the change and in the shape of the skull and the size of the brain, as you mentioned. Um, do you see such changes in like recent species of monkeys? And do we see other evidences of evolution of these cognitive abilities in other animals apart from primates?
Definitely. It's very interesting question. So it's not like that we primates have only evolved. Most other animals have evolved. And here we should clear the meaning of evolution. Evolution has not, the meaning of evolution is not that one animal has come to the top of the world. There is no one who is at the top of the evolutionary chain. Everybody is the best fit for their environment. So as evolved as a primate is, similarly a whale is as evolved for the living in seas. A dolphin is also evolved perfectly for living in the seas. Dolphins are really intelligent animals. So cognitive abilities, another section is self-awareness. Like we go to the mirror, we see ourselves, we are aware of ourselves. We can move our hand, we practice speech in front of mirror to become more aware of ourselves, that what we are doing, how our actions are looking to us. So similarly, dolphins are also very intelligent. Similarly, primates are intelligent. I have only studied them in the wild, but you see, evolution takes time. It's like a very slow process. It always gears you up for things like over a lot of 100,000 years maybe. So it takes time. This brain enlargement that has happened, that has also taken a lot of time. There has been very like different contributing factors. If we start to talk about them, it will like a long session. So we'll not talk about those contributing factors, but I can tell you one thing. What has happened with large brain development is that our childhood has got extended. If you see other animals like a mouse or a pig, they give birth to 6 to 7 kids in one time, and they grew quickly. Even dogs, they grow quickly. Kittens, they grow quickly. But animals like monkeys and humans, babies take time. Babies need to learn. Babies need to understand what is going on. It is because our brain is a very expensive organ. It takes a lot of food in. It requires a lot of nourishment to develop. Once it happens, then we are ready to face the world on our own. We are ready to face the challenges on our own. Like we're ready to cycle alone in our society. Otherwise, our mom is always going with us, running behind the cycle. Okay, don't drive fast, don't drive like on the road. So all these things we learn slowly. That's why we have an extended childhood because of our brain. Our brain requires a lot of energy. That's why we require to give it time to develop. So that's one thing that has
That was
happened with us.
beautifully described.
Yeah.
I remember reading about turtles that they take their first swim within few hours of being born. Or something.
Exactly.
So there's nothing that we are more evolved than them. Our babies can't take a first swim within few hours. Excuse me, within few hours, it's pandemonium, pretty much. Right? So there's no, it's not a hierarchy. We have
Yeah.
always
Yeah,
to
exactly.
unlearn this, that we are on top.
Yeah, exactly. And this basic understanding that humans, or we are at the top of the evolution chain, we are the most advanced, I think it will help us a lot in understanding what science is going to throw out to us like when we grow up. So this is like a teaching for these small kids that you should always keep things in perspective. But that's very important. So I hope I have answered those questions. I
Yeah.
think those are the questions. And now I
Yes.
want to come to a very specific terminology. There are very few terminologies in this whole session. I have kept them away. So we just need to learn this one. Okay. So primates is a scientific term. Primates are the animals which show all these properties that we have learned in the four previous slides, which is, one is this bone or this motion that we can do, prehension. This is called prehension, like swinging motion. Another is like opposable thumb. We have our hand, but we have opposable thumbs as well. We can grasp things, we can plug things, we can eat them like this. We have a grasping habit. Another is forward looking eye, which helps us to see the world in a 3D. And another one is like a large brain and development of cognitive abilities, which is very good reason to say that we ought to live in groups. We can understand one another. So this ability has been rendered to us due to our brain. But the very common term that we use is monkeys. Monkeys are all around us. So that's the term which is the very general term for primates. Primates are monkeys. And there is a very technical term which is used in science, it's called non-human primates. Basically, humans are also primates. Human also comes under primates. So excluding humans, all the other monkeys that live in the wild are called non-human primates. So I hope that is clear with everybody, and if everybody can just show a thumbs up, we can move ahead, right? All right, amazing, amazing.
I showed you my opposable thumb.
That
in the
is
spirit, in the spirit of the lecture.
Thank you. But that is an amazing thing that we have. This opposable thumb helps us to do a lot of things. So all monkeys are primates, as I told you. Humans are also a primate, but there are certain primates that I didn't show you in the picture. So I will just show you a picture of them because that is a lot of diversity over here. Amazing. So here we have the smallest primate, which is a pygmy mouse lemur. You can understand from the name, it's a mouse lemur. It lives in Madagascar, but you can see the diversity in the weight. A gorilla weighs almost 160 kg, whereas a mouse lemur weighs 500 grams. Imagine that. A 500-gram animal is also a primate, whereas a 160 kg animal is also a primate. And they all look so beautiful. You have tarsiers over there, which are highly developed to see in the night. You can see their big bulging eyes, right? They're developed to see in the night. They only are active in the night, they sleep in the day. And then you see lemurs over here. Lemurs are really interesting. If you just Google lemur, you will see a lot of photos there. Google is filled with lemur photos. All right. So now we talk about primate diversity. So there are three overall classes in primates. One is called American primates, but primates are not found across all of America. Primates are not found in North America. Primates are not found in Europe. Primates are not found in Australia. There are various reasons for that, and I will tell you sometime later because it's actually beyond the scope of this seminar. But what is important to understand is that the primates in Americas, which are only found in South America, you can see the continent over there, they're a little bit different from primates in Asia and Africa. Africa, there are a lot of primates. You have primates in India, you have primates in China, you have primates extensively found in all these Southeast Asian small countries like Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, where they cohabit with a lot of humans. Now, there are two special primates that we missed. One is this small island called Madagascar, which is found just on the west of Africa, small island, but lemurs are only found in Madagascar. There is no other place on earth where lemurs are found naturally. You might see them in zoos, but Madagascar is the only continent which have lemurs, and we still do not know all the reasons why lemurs are only there and why they are not on Africa, which is a very interesting question to explore for anybody who is interested. Another thing is primates you see mostly live around the equator. If you see, all these countries are around the equator. They're in a tropic belt, Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. So they're in this tropical belt. But this crazy primate, which is a Japanese macaque, they live in snow sometimes when it snows in Japan. So they live in the most coldest regions in the world. Japan is very cold during snow. It can get to -10, -15 sometimes. But see how gregarious they are, how fluffy they are. They definitely look distressed in this photo because they are. I mean, it's snowing and you have nowhere to go. You are sitting outside. So primates endure a lot of difficulties where they live. They live in the wild. They have to see a lot of challenges. But this is how it is. This is the primate diversity that we see. All right.
Few
Before
more
moving,
questions, Virendra. Shall we ask Snehal?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
So I
बहुत
think-
ही आ रहे हैं chat window में.
So one question was, are apes and primates different?
Okay. And anyone else following this one?
I think, and then Nirali had a question, can primates swim?
I was expecting this. This is like the favorite question of kids. First, I will say apes and primates. No, so primates is a very broad term. Apes come under that primate. You will see the arrow over here as well. I have put apes in a different category, but I have made an arrow which goes into Asian and African primates. So apes are also a primate. Apes are highly evolved. Apes are like our very closest ancestors. We humans and apes had a common ancestor. Apes are gorillas, chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, gibbons, and siamangs. So all these are apes. Okay. Now the another question, do primates swim? Primates can swim. Some of the primates do swim, like Japanese macaque over here. They take hot bath because when it snows, they go into hot springs, swim in there, live in there. So this is how it happens. There are few other macaques like moor macaques, which are found in Southeast Asia mostly. So if you have water in your habitat, you might see an adaptation for swimming. Usually it's also difficult to swim for primates because you find alligators in sea, like in these streams where you swim. So you have predator over there. So you do not go in there. But if you want to swim, there are various evidences of primate swimming. Just go to YouTube, search monkeys swimming. You will find 1 or 2 videos over there. They definitely do go in the water. Yeah.
Okay.
So
And Nirali has one question. She asks, is the swelled mouth of monkeys and gorillas an adaptation?
Definitely. What an interesting question. It is an adaptation because what happens is that in monkeys, where you see monkeys over here, they have this kind of cheek pouches. So what happens is that when they go, so they eat very fast and then they can stuff all their food in these cheek pouches and these cheek pouches. So then they fill it up and then they run. This is mostly found in monkeys, like in the macaques, which are a different. So macaques, this is found, but this is not found in all those monkeys which eat leaves, because leaves are mostly found around everywhere all the time. So those who eat leaves, it is not found, but the monkeys that eat fruits, you will see cheek pouches. They will fill the food in and they will run, because even if the human comes chasing them, they will run and eat in peace. So there is no problem with that. So they do definitely have this. Also, this kind of you see they have kind of like a prognat like protruding jaw. This is also what has happened to us in evolution. Our face is kind of flat, but they have like a protruding jaw over there. That is also one thing that has happened to us in evolution. We have become a little bit flat, but they have a protruding jaw. Yeah, so I think I can
Okay.
move ahead now.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so how do we study primates in the wild? So I am a primatologist because the study of primates is called primatology, and those who study primate are called primatologists. Primatology is a scientific study of primates. Here you can see me. So we study primates during the day because our langurs mostly are active during the day. They sleep during the nights, but we also used to study them during the night while in the dark, because we used to take some kind of data that where do they sleep and how are they sleeping, is there somebody disturbing them. But we also see other things like what langurs eat and how do they spend their time in the wild. So right now we'll explore how do we do that in the field. Okay, so how do we study primates? So it begins like this. You have to search a lot. You have to search around them on the valleys, you have to search around them in the jungle, you have to look around what is going on. So a binocular is your weapon. You have a binocular, you can see a lot of area sitting at one point. So usually what happens is that you move to the top of a hill and you try to explore the hill. Where are the primates? Do you see any movement in the trees? You usually look at the top of the trees or in the middle of the trees. Is there movement somewhere? So searching takes a lot of time for the langur troop as well in the Himalayas. Again, I'm still searching over here. You see, it's not easy. You have to keep searching for that. It does not, it's like you put in the binocular and you see the monkeys. So to search a lot. But once it is done, okay, so now I have found them. I'm still concentrated. I'm a little bit happy. Okay, I can see them somewhere. So once you see them, here are the primates at a very distance from me. So I always maintain a distance of 10 meters from them so that I do not harm them in any way. You have to always keep a distance from them so you do not scare them as well. So here they are sitting on a tree, relaxing, chilling. They are just looking at me. I'm looking at them through a binocular. There is no interaction between us. But how does this happen? So I start to take notes, but what does it require to take notes? So there are very basic requirements that you need to observe primates even in your backyard or when you go onto the field, which are these. So you should have a binocular, a notebook, a pen, and a watch. A watch, why? Because you will see later we make notes using time. So it's like 1727 right now in my watch. So I write 1727, everybody is watching me. So this is kind of a note that I'm making with time. But these are very basic requirements that we have. Another requirement we can use is a GPS. A GPS is a device, handheld device, which we can use to just mark locations everywhere. We can see where are they moving, okay, where are they fighting, where are they feeding. So we can mark all these locations, which will serve an importance in our reports that we make after that. All right, so now we are going to take a look at, so these are the notes I made while in the field. I used to draw in the field because drawing helps you a lot. So even while doing notes, what is important is that you note down the date, you note down the time as I have noted there, you note down the direction, where you're looking, where you are moving, or direction is also important. And then you note down the weather as well. So because it gives you a lot of information when you write a note. Let's say you saw a monkey yesterday at the same time in the east direction. So today also it will be like an inclination that, okay, let me go and look in the east. Should I find the monkey over there once again? So these are information that helps you. And then you draw directions, you draw navigation on your map, because first it helps you to keep a track of the direction where I'm moving, but also increases your navigation capabilities while you're in a field. Right now we are in our at home, and I know you had some sessions regarding directions and maps previously, so you know how important map making is, you know how important like searching our own direction is. So all these things helps us in the field. We have directions, we have all the notes, so we can go and look back. Okay, so this is like the kind of data. This is a little bit difficult for you, but you just do not to give in the details. This is like a table that I draw, and I note down all these different categories over there. It's a table, and I note down important things that I see. But the important part is this is called a group scan. This one page is a one group scan. So this is basically noting down what activity is going on in a 20-minute period. I decide a period starting from 5:30 to 5:50. I will observe the whole group and I will note down what everybody is doing. That's the aim. But what it gives us, what it is used for, it gives us a count. It helps us to count how many individuals are there. And over time, over so many days, when you have like a 10-20 scans or more than that, you can take out an average. So our average is, our group has 78 langurs. Our group average is 110 langurs. So this is how you get that. It also gives you an overview of group's activity. Here you see most of the animals here are majorly resting. They're also moving. They're also feeding. Now, where are they feeding? Feeding is eating basically. They might be feeding on the ground because they can come onto the ground. They might be feeding on the tree because they mostly remain on the tree. So you get all these kind of information, what is happening where. And also over a period of time, let's say over a month, over a season, over an year, over many years, you get to see a lot of things. This is called their time budget. So the way we budget our finances, like, okay, today I asked my mom to bring 4 biscuits and 2 jam and like 1 bread and butter. So you budget all these price like this, all this amount. Similarly, we see how monkeys budget their time. So are they spending most of the time resting? So that means, are they really lazy, or it's the season that makes them lazy? So it helps to answer all these kind of questions. It also helps to see that when fruit comes in the wild, what happens to them? Do they spend most of the time searching for fruit, eating for fruit, or fighting over fruit? Like, this fruit is mine, so you should not come near me. So there are also fights happening all the time. So it gives us all this information. All right, so another example we will see. Again, as I told you, drawings is very important. Here what I did is I was seeing the troop that I was studying. You will see, most important, I've noted the time is always important. You note everything with time. But I've also drawn a diagram. So this whole monkeys are spread on a hill, so I have drawn with small dots. If you'll see on the diagram, I have marked the position of these monkeys, which will help me go and see once again. When I go back to my base camp, I'll see, okay, there were so many monkeys at this point of time in the sleeping tree itself. So okay, they were not moving at that one time that much. But I always draw a compass at some corner. I have directions marked, north, east, west, south, where I'm looking, and a time. These are two important things that you should remember. Another is to understand the vegetation. What do they eat? What plants are around? Plants are very important for any animal. And if you want to understand them, the quickest way is to draw them. If you continuously start to draw them, you will understand different patterns between different leaves. You can see two different examples of leaves over here. One is little bit broad and flattened, and one is little bit pointed out. So all these things help you. It helps you learn. It helps you learn a lot of things that you might miss just by observing. So it's always good to make notes in the wild. So what we learned, now we have seen that, are there any questions? Okay, first.
I think so.
Yeah.
Virendra, let's stop.
Yes.
So Virendra, a few important questions. Like, let's take some interesting ones. First thing, Sneha, shall we start?
Yes, sure. So I think, yes. So Pooja had asked, where does the Himalayan langur monkey sleep?
Interesting. Okay. I will come to this question just in the next like 2 or 3 slides. So I will
Okay.
ask Pooja to wait for the answer and
Okay.
they will see the answer.
And another question was, how do primates protect themselves when they're sleeping from if there's danger?
Amazing. So I'll also come to that in the
Okay.
next slides. I will keep in mind.
The other question is, how do you protect yourself when they come close to you, or
Yes.
how do you protect them when you guys come close proximity?
Interesting. So I'll answer that.
Uh,
Basically, we never go near them, and
hmm.
you see, monkeys in the wild never come near you. I know we all
uh,
have experiences of monkeys in our society, in the
yeah,
city. They're trying to grab food from us. But
yeah,
what has happened is that those monkeys are like they used to live in the forest, but sometime the forest got destroyed. They came into the city. Now they don't have natural food. So they are left with no source but to ask for food. And once we don't give them food, they resort to snatching food from us. But in the wild, monkeys usually do not do that.
So,
So,
Daksh asks, has any langur attacked you ever? Have you ever been attacked by a primate other than
okay,
a
so
human? Other than a human, which we would take for granted, verbally or in any other form. All
I
the young
understand
minds
that.
are laughing. Us, Snail, they are getting a sense of humor now. Yeah.
I understand that. But yeah, I have been in between a langur fight. So I was not attacked, but I was in between a fight. What happened is that we were doing our observations, but a langur outside from our group attacked our group. So all the males made a coalition like we do when somebody outside attack our friends, and they started fighting. So they were jumping and they were making loud sounds, and I was in the middle. So one large langur just landed near me and thumped on the rock, but I was saved, and then I quickly got out of the action. So that was my closest encounter. But usually they will not harm you, they will not attack you, and they will maintain a distance from you. You don't have to maintain that.
Yeah.
They are really shy, so they will not come near to you unless and until you hold a banana towards them, which
Huh.
we should never do. So this is another learning for all these young kids over here, that we should never feed any monkey in our society, outside in the forest. It is very important. We should never feed any wild animal.
You're disturbing their life
Yes.
because
We are
yeah,
yeah, exactly. We are
absolutely.
making them habitual to taking food from us. Then they become lazy. They don't want to go in the forest anymore. So we should not do that.
So Nirali follows up. Was that langur attack funny or scary? For a moment, did your heart go thud? Like, oh my God, am I going to get out of the Himalayas alive?
No, that langur attack usually does not happen. It happened once in a while. That was a little bit scary for me. That was the first time I have seen this up close. Usually, when you see them from a distance, they are really funny. The way they fight, the way they interact, they're really funny. But that was a little bit scary for me. It will not happen with you. I can guarantee. They're always on the tree and you're always on the ground. All right. Any more questions or we move forward?
Uh, Let me just check.
My question is: are monkeys vegetarian? What do they eat? You mentioned
Interesting,
vegetation.
interesting. So there are two kind of monkeys. One are those who predominantly eat a lot of leaves. Those are just like our cows. Cows eat a lot of green vegetation, right? So monkeys, there are langurs eat a lot of leaves. They are called colovines. And then you have Carcopithecines, which is a very difficult term, Cercopithecines or Carcopithecines. They're mostly fruit-eating animals, or they also eat insects. So there is a diversity in the diet of monkeys, but largely we classify them as what they eat mostly. So there are certain monkeys that mostly eat leaves, and certain monkeys that mostly eat fruits. Chimpanzees do eat meat sometimes, which happens when somebody is killed in an encounter. So they try to digest that meat. There are other animals who also eat meat. Then recently we found that chimpanzees also do fishing. They're crab eating chimpanzees, so they eat crab sometimes. Fishing, they also do fishing. So that's a very developed cognitive trait in a primate species. Okay, so chimpanzees are really intelligent. They're apes, and we have sporadic evidences. Sporadic as in this is not found in all the primates, but primates are also very adaptive, so they adapt according to their habitat. So if their habitat does not give them much food, they can adapt to meat eating. I'm not saying they do, but there is always a possibility. So
Virendra, Athansh has a great question. Fishing with their hands?
no,
This is a great question. Nobody
I know,
thought
I
of
know.
that. Like, where do they
They
get a
were
fishing rod from? Do they just go to the store?
no, that's very interesting. So coming to fishing rod, chimpanzees can manufacture tools. A tool is anything that helps us, right? This pen is a tool, a screwdriver is a tool, which helps us to ease out things. Chimpanzees can manufacture tools in the form of stones to break nuts, in the form of twigs to like churn out termites from a termite mound to eat for insects. They can also make stone tools to break these honey nests to pluck out honey, to eat honey from there. So they definitely can manufacture tools. I unfortunately have no idea about how do they used to fish over that, but I will read about it and then maybe again revert back. Yeah. So
Okay, we can move ahead. Virendra.
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so what did we learn from the wild? The most important thing we learn are newborn babies are always a lot of grabs a lot of attention. Everybody is coming there. Here you can see everybody's coming there, looking at them, what they're doing. They're really cute over there. And the important thing is in all the primates, most of the primates, the fur color of the baby, the hair that they have is a little bit different from the adult ones. The grown-ups has a different body hair as compared to the baby. In certain primates, the adult ones are properly black with certain white marks, but the baby is exceptionally white. Those are called colobus monkeys. If you just Google around colobus, COLOBUS, you will see their babies. They're white and the adults are black. What else do we learn? We learn that life is usually spent in a group where duties are shared. Males usually do duties like protecting of the group, protecting from the predators, protecting from other encounters, again securing the territory where there is a lot of food for the females to eat. So this is a strategy kind of thing. Like this is like a very good patch. So males will go show their build and muscle and all these kind of things. Duties are shared. Females are involved in rearing the infant. Females are involved in taking care of the group. Females are also involved in heading where we are going. So like a lot of females take decisions unanimously that we are going to move in this direction. So usually the group moves in that direction. Females are really important in a group. They are the center of a group. Then you have kids and then you have juveniles. They mostly spend time in playing because playing is very important for development of a primate. We also play and play makes a lot of difference as we grow up. It's okay to lick cement. Okay, so they do a lot of cement licking. They eat a lot of like we eat chalk. You remember we eat chalk when we are young. Monkeys also like a lot of chalk. This thing is very important to them. It gives them salt, it gives them minerals which are not usually available. And not just this, they lick cement, they lick sand. They also sometimes eat insects, which is a source of protein. So all these things do happen in monkeys as it happens in humans. Another thing is you spend a lot of time in taking care of your body, taking care of your personal hygiene because you're living in the wild and you're always sitting close to one another. You can see over here. So a lot of things can transfer from one person to another. So you need to be very careful with that. That's why grooming is very important. You see, grooming is an important feature. So what benefits could it serve? If anybody can just write in the chat, any of the kids who want to say, what benefits could grooming serve them? Like it also gives us a lot of benefit similar to that. If you remember your childhood.
Yeah, maybe you know what happens, Virendra, they don't remember, we remember. Because काम हमने किया है. So grooming means what I remember, bath 2-3 times a day for hygiene, powder, oil for the skin, cleaning changing the diaper 10 times a day. All of that is grooming, right? You don't want a diaper rash.
So Srinidhi says it affects skin diseases.
Definitely,
exactly.
It keeps you away from disease. That's a personal hygiene thing. Definitely. Any other guesses?
I mean, look, grooming for us is also because when we see ourselves in the mirror, we look good. But I don't know if monkeys have mirrors in the wild. So they don't probably get that feedback from the grooming, right? So I don't know how that works.
Okay, so a very important thing about grooming is that it helps build social connections. Like if I go to somebody, I start helping them, I start helping them with the ticks, I keep removing the ticks from their body. It develops a bond of affection. It keeps us together. So that is a very good thing about group living. You help one another. You help your kids. If the mother is not around, the aunt can help the kid, the niece and nephew can play with the kid. So that is the advantages of living in a big family. And they have a pretty much big family that we see. 78 people in one family always moving together. It's crazy.
So do they mate for life, Virendra?
I mean, that's a very human-centric question because we have seen in our society that we do mate for life. Definitely, there are monkeys like gibbons who show social monogamy, which is there is a male, there is a female, they will rear their family. In these langurs and other monkeys, sometimes it happens as there are multiple males and multiple females, but all the males mate with females. So it's more dependent on the availability of the females and the reproductive cycle. So it happens a little bit different in the wild as it happens in the human society.
It's truly a very group living.
It's truly a very group living thing.
Exactly. It's not a centric one family means male, female and their kids.
And group living has its benefit. You see, you are living in the wild, so you require more eyes to take a vigil. You require more eyes to see things around, right? So that's why you require more people to take care of you around. It also gives you a lot of confidence and affection. That's why. So we'll move ahead. Okay, so how do they sleep? Where do they sleep? And how do they protect themselves during sleeping? Monkeys usually sleep on the trees. Most of the monkeys sleep on trees. There are large bodied primates like chimpanzees and gorillas. They do sometimes sleep on the ground because there is usually no predator for them. No predator is big enough to kill a gorilla. Gorilla is a 160 kg animal, pretty big enough. So they sometimes sleep on the ground. Sometimes they climb over the tree. Chimpanzees make elaborate nests. They can bring one branch from here, other from here, intertwine them and make a bed for them. It's literally a bedding. Then they bring in leaves and make a bedding. Other primates, if you see over here, they sleep on the trees, sleep on the branches, and they usually sleep upright. They're like sleeping like this, and like their hands stuck like this and their head lower down. What it happens is it makes them balance over on these all these branches, even during rain, even during stormy season, even during heavy weather. No problem, we can definitely sleep on trees. Like, these primates are amazing. And they sleep in alone, they sleep in groups of two, as you can see over here on the bottom left corner. They also sleep in groups of 3 to 4, like two mothers and their two kids are sleeping together. So it helps them to balance over a branch. It gives them a lot of balance because they have certain balancing mechanisms. How do they protect themselves like in the dark? So they're all the animals that can attack a primate or a monkey, they're usually ground dwelling. They usually move on the ground. So that's why they sleep on the trees. So an animal cannot climb on these trees. They also choose the kind of trees which are straight, which are long straight without many branches in the ground and only the canopy at the top. So they just climb quickly. So the animal cannot climb, but they will climb quickly. They also sleep on trees which have alternate directions to exit. So this is one tree, another tree over here, over here, over here. So if the animal comes from here, they can quickly rise and run away from all these other trees. Similarly, they sleep dispersed. They do not sleep on just one single tree, they sleep on multiple trees. The advantage is you can see anybody coming from all these sides. Like when it's a full moon night, you can sleep at the top of the tree. The top of the tree gives you a large enough view to keep a vigil, like a lighthouse, like a tower where you can climb on the top and you can see all those animals around. If a leopard is coming, you get a quick alarm call and then you run. So that's how it happens. They also sleep on cliff. Have you seen those straight cliff faces where we cannot potentially climb, but these animals can go there? Here there's a photo of langurs climbing on a cliff. They sleep on the cliff. So what possible reason could it be? I mean, why you sleep on a cliff sometimes? It has a very important reason. That's why. You see, it's very inaccessible. Inaccessible for whom? That's the idea.
Well, definitely not for things like eagles and all, because they can access a cliff. So it's not for like hawks and eagles and those kind of birds of prey.
Daksh says us.
True.
Us. True.
That's super true. Very good, Daksh.
We cannot go over there. But importantly, leopards, other small carnivores also cannot climb over there. You just cannot climb on these straight facing cliffs. So it helps them to protect them from all these predators. Birds of prey are important. They sometimes harm these animals. They mostly pick the young monkeys, like the infants and juveniles, but they also have defense mechanisms, different defense mechanisms, like you hide in the canopy inside the tree where the bird of prey cannot reach. Sometimes there are various defense mechanisms as well. Okay, so what else did we observe? We observed that they eat a lot of leaves in the forest. You can see over here this langur over here in the video. He's like ferociously plucking out leaves and just eating leaves from anywhere there they see. And the important thing is that they supplement their diet with fruits and other small things as well. You see, flowers are very important, fruits are important, insects sometimes are important. As I've mentioned again, meat eating also happens. So this is very important. It is a very important question in ecology, that what do they eat, what primates eat in their different habitats. And another interesting behavior that we observed is this video I want to play for you, and I hope you do not catch this thing because it's kind of infectious, but this sneeze is pretty much interesting to me. And so this monkey got cold and they're actually sneezing just like us. If you can hear the sound, I will just play the sound and you can hear this. Can you hear the sneeze sound? And this female was sneezing for quite a lot of time. That was it. All right, all right. So I'll move forward. Oh, what happened? Okay. Yeah. So before coming on to this section, any more questions?
Okay. Nirali has another interesting question. She asks, do apes get allergies like we do?
Interesting. Very good questions. All the animals that we interact with can get allergies from us. Not only monkeys, all the animals. All the monkeys are highly susceptible to all these allergies because they share a lot of. We have a common ancestor sometimes back in the future. They're very closely related. So these are called zoonoses or zoonotic diseases, diseases that are arising from animals. Similarly, apes or monkeys can transfer their disease to us. We can transfer our disease to us. A very important example of this was a polio outbreak that happened in a chimpanzee community in 1970s, where a lot of chimpanzees died because of polio. So after that, fieldwork rules came in, and the rule came in that you cannot feed the monkeys from close, you cannot go close to them because there is always a risk of transfer of disease. So definitely apes and other monkeys can get allergies from us. Similarly, we can get allergies from them as well. Not only polio, HIV is a big example. AIDS can also spread from monkeys to humans. So these are things that need to be kept in mind.
So Pooja has a question. She asks, when they sleep on trees, don't the branches break?
Interesting. Amazing question. First of all, branches are not like that. Branches are very pliable. Plants are very interesting creatures in their own. And I am really interested in plants, but like unfortunately, I do not study them. So branches are pliable. Branches can hold their weights. And the important thing is that all these monkeys have weight distribution mechanisms. So their body weight is centered somehow that they do not break the branch, but they can still climb over the branch. Examples are their hands have cushioned feet. So these parts of their hands have cushions, so they grab them very softly. Also, since they are on their all the fours, so their weight is distributed on all their four limbs. Another part is that they have hardened patches under their bums. So like our bums are soft skin, they have hardened patches which helps them to center on these rough branches but not put enough pressure on them. So
That sounds like useful.
that hard surface actually distributes the weight. So there are various mechanisms for distributing the weight and not breaking the branch. Any other question, or we move forward? I mean,
We can move
all right,
forward.
all
They
right.
can type.
All right, all right. So now we come to the most important part of this talk, where I want to talk to you about is why study them, why primates are important, and what we can do to save them. Primates are important because they are a window into our past. Long time ago, we shared a common ancestor, like a very, very, very times 12 old or like grandfather or grandmother we had in the very old past from where we all originated. In this diagram also you can see there is a line on the left which is dividing and further branching out, and you see all these monkeys originating from that. A recent discovery tells us that there were monkeys who might have seen dinosaurs dying. Can you imagine that? Monkeys are as old as dinosaurs. This research says there is a fossil that we have found, and that is of a primate, and it is of the similar age when dinosaurs were dying. So there's a chance that monkeys would have seen dinosaurs dying, which is really interesting. So monkeys are
Superb.
that old. Monkeys are that old on this earth. So the important thing to study them is to look at us, to see how humans came up, how our society is, what we are actually, because we do not understand ourselves better when we look at them. When we look at our cousins, we understand a lot of things about us, like how society develops and how the role of females, the role of males, all these duties that we share. It's interesting. Another very interesting thing is that these fruit eating primates, leaf eating primates who eat a lot of fruit, sometimes they disperse all these seeds. All these seeds, they do not digest it. It always comes out in their poop in the morning. So let's say one primate is at this point and eat fruit over there and move to another point while just randomly moving around, and then in the morning they defecate over there. In that defecation you have seeds. So this helps the forest to regrow. I mean, you should wonder how forests regrow. How, I mean, if you cut a tree, how does it regrows? It happens like this. Not only primates, but birds also help a lot in this. So birds and primates are seed dispersers. They disperse seeds. This is how trees move from one place to another. These are the agents for trees to move. So that is very important thing. If we do not save primates, there will be no seed dispersal, there will be no forest regeneration, and we can lose forest as well. So everything is interconnected. A lot of interconnections over there. Another thing is to protect them from extinction. This beautiful primate, this G's golden langur, is found in a small patch in our northeast India, in Sikkim and all these. It's really endangered. Its habitat is very small. And the meaning of the word endangered is that because if you do not take care of them, if you do not protect them, if you do not help them, if you do not protect their forest, they will have no place to live. They will not be able to jump from one place to another. They will always have to move on ground. And while moving on ground, you see dogs, and dogs can attack them. So that is a difficulty, you see. So our aim should be to like plant a lot of trees in our surroundings as well. So these primates get a lot of place to move around. And I will come to Dr. Karishma's question, as she shared at the very starting that she saw monkeys in their society. I also see monkeys in my society. I hope you people also see monkeys in a society. So this also happens because there used to be a forest over there, but everything was lost. Like when we started to growing our cities, these trees were cut, and therefore they have to come onto the ground. Therefore they have to come into our city to find food, because they cannot find food in their forest. So to protect their home, a good way is to plant trees that they love. I mean, not just any other tree, but the trees that they love. It's very important. They will find food from there, and they can also sleep on these trees. So that's the thing. So I hope you understand the term endanger. It's like if you do not take care of them, they might die in the near future. So it is also our duty to take care of our wildlife and our biodiversity. Okay.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what can we do now? Let me explain these three images to you. One thing is that we should not feed them. Feeding, we think it's very good, we are helping the animals, but actually we might make them lazy, we might change their activities. So you see, we all have our natural activities, but when we start to get something additional to it, we might change it, right? So definitely their activities can also change around when they are in the forest, or when they come to city, or when they come to you, give them food. So they think, okay, I'm coming to this person, they're giving me food readily, so I don't have to search for food in the forest. So okay, let's see, I'll get food from there. So this changes their habitat, and this changes their different activities. Another thing is that we should never keep primates as pets. All these images that we see on websites, on social media, we should actively discourage them. But what happens is, it is like a very psychological cue. If you see all these kind of images like primates as pets, primate riding on their back, you are holding a monkey in your lap, so what happens is everybody feels like, okay, if this person can do that, I can also do that. And this is how it's like a chain reaction, it propagates. We should not do that. Why? First of all, it gives them a lot of stress. They are a lot of stressed out. Okay, why this human is holding us? It's not a natural habitat. Also, there is a risk of transfer of diseases from one another. So we should never bring the wildlife into our home. I mean, we should always care for them in very different ways, but not bring them in our home. Also, we should always take care the kind of images that we are posting. We should always post an image where the animal is at least 10 meters away from us, 15 meters away from us in image. We should never be very close to an animal, feeding them, holding them in our hand, maybe plugging their cheeks and anything like that. With these primates, it's really, really detrimental, because we know we are only doing it for like out of our care, but some people understand that these primates are like pets, and there is a lot of trade of primates. People hunt them sometimes in the wild, people trade them, so we are actually harming them. So I think we should not do all these kind of things. So what I am doing over here. So our research and the research of a lot of primatologists who are doing really great work in all these countries, their research help us to know all these questions. So what they eat, how do they live, where do they sleep, and where do they play? All these kind of questions help us to understand the primate better. It helps us to understand the environment of the primate. I mean, let's say they live in a forest, they live in a village, they live on the edge of it. It helps us to understand the primate better. How much time does it sleep? What kind of structure does it require to sleep? What kind of fruits does it require? What are the fruits that this animal require or like so much? Like, let's say they require figs a lot. So you can plant fig trees in the forest, so they remain in the forest and not come into your home. So all these things helps you. And when we know this, we can plant all these kind of trees that they prefer to sleep on, or to play on, or to eat. And this is how we can make them safe in their homes. So this will be my message to you, and I hope you also convey it to all your other colleagues and friends and families, that this is what we can do. We can plant good trees, we can plant reliable trees in their habitats, and we can protect the primates altogether. Thank you.
Very nice, Virendra. My God, the feedback has already come in even before you finished. Wonderful session, wonderful session. So, Virendra, good question. Athan Shah asked, is do they pooping? I mean, I'm being very honest here. do they also poop in private? Like, is that human element that we have inhibitions to perform some basic bodily functions? So, is it a public pooping? Is it a private pooping? How do they prefer it?
It's it's definitely a public pooping, because
Okay, okay.
when I told you I have seen them, so
Yeah. I mean, they may not have known you were there.
So what happens is there could be a peculiar pattern to this. What I have observed in Himalayan langurs is that the first defecation always happens from their sleeping place.
Oh,
This
really?
is I think we have 2 minutes, so I'll just tell you a small story and a
Huh.
small lesson. When monkeys live top one of the trees and they wake up in the morning, they try to defecate. So they defecate from there, and this poop directly comes down on the ground just under their tree. So there's an adaptation, which is again parasite avoidance, where they do not come directly down from their tree. They will exit from a different tree to not come in contact with their poop. This is self-awareness. This is when you are aware that we can get infected from our own poop itself, because it is a lot of bacteria. So that is a very interesting adaptation that I see, and it also makes me locate their sleeping sites. Let's say these monkeys in the summer usually wake up at 5 a.m., but sometimes I wake up at 6 a.m. Usually I wake up at 4:30, but sometimes I wake up at 6 a.m. So I miss them at their sleeping site, but I can smell that this is their sleeping site. I can actually make it out that, okay, they slept over here. So you see, there's a lot of things.
I mean, it's inspirational in so many ways. You know, if you're passionate about your work, getting up at 4:30 in the morning is also. I mean,
That was-
right?
that
That's
was
your
my-
life. That's your job.
That's the
Right.
thing. That was my master's thesis work, and I thoroughly enjoyed it in the Himalayas. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
It really shows. We don't have too much more time because Snehal, any questions that hit you? Other
I
than
think
we
there was a question. Yes, there was a question to primates and do monkeys also have blood groups like we do?
Amazing. You see, our blood groups comes from macaque. What happens is that there is a RH plus antigen. RH means rhesus. Rhesus plus antigen, rhesus minus antigen. So the blood grouping that we have, AB plus minus, O plus minus. So that plus sign that we keep there, that is an RH antigen. RH antigen means rhesus antigen. It was first discovered in macaques, like the monkeys that we see, lal muh wale bandar, red face monkeys. And then this terminology transferred into our human usage. So it definitely comes out from there.
do share that. We do share.
Yeah,
share.
exactly.
That's one. I mean, I think we can. There's so many questions, right? I mean,
So,
that come to my mind. Can we do blood transfusion from monkeys to humans? These are all kinds of questions that come.
I can do one thing. I can share my email in the chat box for everybody to send me questions. I'm open to questions anytime you can send me. But first of all, look at these monkeys by the time I share my email, and just figure out that you might have seen all these monkeys in your backyard sometime or the another. I mean, I'm sure of that. But I will share my email in the chat by the time you see these monkeys, right?
Just a thing, Virendra. Our backyard is not exactly the Himalayas, you know. So we don't exactly have the good fortune of seeing these exotic species that you do. I think I've seen only this one, bottom one on the
Left.
first. That's
Exactly,
the only
but
one.
these are the monkeys that are found all over India. Let's say on the top left, we have a capped langur, which is found in the northeast. In Himalayas, none of these monkeys except macaques are found. Then you have Hanuman langurs are found in most of the India, like in complete northern India and all these South India as
You
well.
see them in Mahabaleshwar and all of that.
Mahabaleshwar everywhere.
Yeah.
Then you have this Assamese macaque, which is a new Arunachal macaque, which is a newly discovered species few years back by Dr. Anindya Sinha. Then you have bonnet macaque over here, which is found in Bandipur National Park famously and all these South Indian places. You have lion-tailed macaque, which is like an amazing species. This in the bottom row, third animal, like this black one with a mane, that is a lion-tailed macaque, and it is an amazing species. Then you have Nilgiri langur over there, second in the top row. It is found in South India. So they're spread all over India. India is like a biodiversity hotspot for monkeys. It's a primate habitat country.
We should be very proud of that, and we should be preserving
Exactly.
that. We are blessed.
We are blessed with this diversity.
Absolutely. Thank you, Virendra.